Hey, bro, let's get into this thing.
It's Damashe and Michael, just talking tech.
The following podcast on the Your Own Pay Podcast Network will contain adult content. Listener discretion is advised. More information about this episode can be found at yourownpay.com.
Okay, so I believe I am recording. Yep, I am recording here. We've been recording for 9 seconds. Oh, yeah, I need to record on my end, too, because I don't trust new things.
Not at all.
What this software, from my understanding of it, does is it will record locally on my end and locally on your end, and then well, I don't know that it's locally on your computer, how that works, but then it uploads both of the audios, and then I can download both of them, and they're already matched up, so we don't have to say, oh, we are starting recording in 3, 2, 1. You know what I mean? So let's see how this goes. I'll put a link to this at yourownpay.com/DM43 for people who are interested.
43, man. And I'm using Edge right now.
Aha! Intriguing. I'm using Chrome right now. I got a guest link if you want to invite anyone else you want to invite to our show.
Nah.
No?
Not
yeah,
today.
me neither.
This is interesting. So what's the pricing model? Have you looked?
$10 a month for 2 hours. And then they go up from there. I don't know that I'm going to pay for it, but we'll see how the quality is from each side. And drop them both into Reaper with that FX plugin chain. And I think we'll be pretty well set for a good majority of the editing, actually. Well, the mastering of it.
Yeah, that affects broadcast chain. Makes you sound like I'm on the radio. I guess that's why they call it broadcast, but that's what it was. It seemed like it was shooting for, because I applied it, and you can do the thing in Reaper where you can hit B and it'll bypass the effects. So I hit B, bypass it to see what I sounded like, and then I hit, turned it back on, and I was like, I was giving it more that old school radio sound,
that punch to it. And I don't know if you noticed, but it did take some of your breath out though. And it's an effective gating plugin for sure. Yeah,
I actually didn't listen to that much of it. I just applied it, rendered that version of it out, and then threw it up in that bucket so you could take a listen.
Yeah. So buckets and Android, I guess we can talk about. So this month is 1 year. Intriguing. And I'm satisfied. I mean, it's. There are some points, like when I saw that Fantastical invite that you sent me, and I'm like, oh, I do miss that app.
So how did that look? Because you're the first person I've sent one to since they updated, and I was like, well, hey, here's a chance for me to test out this whole proposed time thing and see how it works.
So, first of all, I heard about this software we're using now, which is called SquadCast. I couldn't remember the name when I was talking to Jason earlier today. And so I had to look up in your messages. I'm like, what's the name of that? So I heard about that and the Fantastical update on the Mosin at Large podcast when I was listening to it on Saturday from Jonathan Mosin. And then day before yesterday, I'm like, oh, Damashe sent me he must have upgraded to Fantastical 3. And so the process was pretty straightforward. You click the link, shows you a couple of available times. Did you select those times, or did it just show me times that were available on your calendar?
No, I selected those times.
Okay. So it showed me those times. It was like today, tomorrow, or the 15th, because I don't think you selected Valentine's Day. And then it let me select 2 times. Well, I think it let me select as many as I wanted, if I remember right. Then it gave me an edit box, and I could type in a note, which I assume you got, and then I hit submit or request or something like that. Now, one gotcha, if the Fantastical 3 people, what's the name of that company?
Flexibits.
If the Flexibits people are listening to this, then what you should probably consider doing is figuring out a way that, at least with JAWS, a way to identify if you have something checked. So, for example, I checked the 13th and the 15th. And I'm like, well, why don't we just get it done and over with and get it on the 12th or the 15th? So I went back up, and it did not tell me if the 13th or the 15th was already selected, which I knew they were. So I unselected it, which again did not provide any audible feedback. And then I went to the 12th and selected that. Was unable to tell if it was selected or not, because they weren't checkboxes, they were buttons that you select. And then I hit submit, and then what happened on your end?
So looks like when you chose it, I'm guessing because I set the original appointment at, for today's time, It set that one as the selected time. I did see your note where it said, I selected 2 different times to see what happens. But that was pretty much it. Like, it went ahead and verified it as an actual appointment on the calendar. Then I got a notification from Fantastical that it sent out the actual invite for the appointment, and that was pretty much it.
And then I accepted it, put it on my Google account, and then we're like, hey, or Michael was like, hey, let's try this new thing out, because that's how we roll. And I could not update so when I went into calendar.google.com, which I'm using on the computer more than anything, because, imagine this, it's faster than navigating some of the desktop apps. But anyways, so I went to calendar.google.com and found the event, tried to edit it, said, because you are not the creator of this event, these updates will only show on your calendar. And that's why I sent you that message.
It could just be like my G Suite settings for calendars or something.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know how that default
probably
works.
the issue. I don't think it's a Fantastical thing. I think it's probably a G Suite permissions.
Probably. Yeah.
Thing. But yeah, so I saw funnily enough, I was in Reddit, r/blind. I was looking for your post about BE101 and I never got to it. I didn't get a chance to search.
Did you click that link that I sent you, maybe?
I did not see a link. I must have missed it.
And now that thread has moved so far that's what I hate about messages. Well, that's what I hated about messages on iOS. On Android, I can just tap search, and then there's a link option. I hit link, and it shows me all the links in that message thread.
Yeah, so I have on the Mac, and this only works on the Mac at the moment, another app from Flexibits, Chatology, where I could do the same thing, like just search that thread for links, which I have used in the past. I didn't realize you had actually sent a link, so I didn't even try to go search for it, but I was using our favorite iOS, still ain't in the App Store yet, Reddit app, to scroll through. Yep. And I saw a post. Somebody asked a question about accessible scheduling applications. And I saw that Jonathan Mosen was one of the people who answered. And he's like, yeah, if you're on iOS, because you didn't specify platform, which they didn't, but if you're on iOS or Mac, Fantastical 3 just came out and it's great. And those people are passionate about accessibility and et cetera, et cetera. It's a great app. You should take a look at it. It does have a subscription for additional features, blah, blah, blah. And the only thing I took umbrage with, now, to be fair, within the short amount of time, which I don't think it's even been a full 2 weeks, the Fantastical 3 has been out, they have been on a rapid update cycle to fix bugs, some of which were accessibility issues. I didn't actually look at the date of his post to see, but man, I gotta tell you, I was in one of those situations when I first updated the Fantastical 3 on iOS. I was like, oh man, I really wish I could just go back, because it was horrible. Like, I couldn't. Excuse me, I'm getting sick again, I think.
Oh shit.
Yeah, man. Fucking school.
Going around work.
Fucking schools, man. It's the worst. It's the worst. This is why people homeschool. It's not for any other reason they tell you. So the kids are bringing home germs for other people. That's what it's really about.
Yep.
But Fantastical 3 does have some super nice features. One thing that they implemented now is a subscription. You can pay monthly or annually. It's only $40 a year, or $4.99 a month.
That's really not bad in the grand scheme of things, especially for what you get.
Yeah, I say only because the Mac app by itself was $49 for Fantastical 2. It was actually $49. So considering the features that they built in, so one thing they've implemented is a Flexibits account now, so that you can one that keeps your subscriptions intact across platforms, so Mac and iOS and Apple Watch. But it also allows them to do, and I think that's another reason. Like, I'm not upset about the subscription. I was upset originally, and I didn't post anything online. I shot them off an email with some concerns of accessibility things that I had encountered on first upgrading. I'm personally not upset about the subscription because the server side component of this will allow them to do things like the calendar suggested times, or the thing that I use with you with the invite and the proposed times. And I'm pretty sure they're going to roll out more server side features. They also have integrated support for more services directly through Flexibits or through Fantastical, so you don't have to add all of your stuff to iOS or Mac OS in order to get it to show up. So Google, obviously, you can connect to Google directly through the app. You can connect to your iCloud calendars. This is important if you're an iOS user or a Mac user. You can use your iOS calendars, your iCloud calendars, through their direct sign-in with Apple. But if you want your reminders integration for the new reminders format in iOS 13 and macOS Catalina, you need to add that account from your device. So you need to have that account set up on your device and active, and then you just check a box that says use, iOS reminders. Some other services they've integrated with, which is really interesting. Like, it kind of solved the problem. I was like, man, this is so weird that me and Mike was just talking about Todoist. They have direct integration for Todoist. So I can go to the accounts, add account, and add Todoist, connect my Todoist account, and now it pulls those in. It shows those in the task view. So I can see everything that's in my Todoist. I can tweak the settings so that it's only showing me, if you have projects and things like that set up in Todoist, you can tweak it so that it's only showing maybe your inbox or, other projects. The other big feature that they brought to iOS that was on macOS throughout Fantastical 2's lifetime is calendar sets, which allows you to customize the view of what calendars and tasks that you want to see in a given view. So I have one that's called Focused, which only shows me tasks from specific projects in Todoist, only shows me 2 calendars, and filters out the rest of the stuff. So I don't see the family calendars. I don't see, holiday calendars, all of that sort of stuff. So I'm happy with the overall update. And I got to be honest, like, there were some major accessibility issues when they first launched. Like, I couldn't add an account on iOS period without toggling off voiceover and trying to tap to see which one I was going to get. macOS was similar, except that they had the buttons for you to add a new account. They just weren't labeled. So it's like, click the button and see what you get. And it's like, nope, don't want that service. I don't even know what that is. But they have fixed those very, very quickly. So I must continue to give them their props for, how they fixed the issues that they created with the update. Last thing I'll say about it is, like, I like the third-party integrations that they've done. So they have Todoist, they have Google Tasks, funny enough. I was like, might need to start looking at Google Tasks now. But I thought it was interesting that it's like, they just solved my Todoist problem. Damn it. And I had, completely gotten away from Todoist. It's like, I don't care about it anymore. It's all over. It's like, well, here's a way for you to use it. And I was like, shit, Mike told me I should build it out. And I was like, no, man, I'm not doing it. Maybe they do listen to the show.
I've completed 2309 tasks in Todoist now. It's a lot of tasks.
That is a lot of tasks. I'm gonna say this, and we can cut it out because I'm not trying to stomp on your achievement. But for people listening that hear that number, some of Mike's tasks are like repeating things that happen every week or every day.
Yeah. So I have 4 tasks that repeat every day. So don't look at your Todoist score and be like, oh man, I'm really slacking the hell off. It's like Mike has really put most of the things that he needs to be reminded of in Todoist, if not everything. So, right down to setting up a custom schedule for reminding him to empty the dog bowl, I think it was, or change the dog water or something like that. Refill the dog water is my custom task that I definitely refer to. And then I've got like download and convert Lars Larson, download and convert Ag Info, download and convert NWR, tower logs, and post public party call log. So there's 5 that I get reminded of every weekday morning, because that's tasks that I have to do at work. And sometimes I get busy. Like today, I did not complete 2 of those. No, one of them. Oh, I got all of them except for one. I didn't complete one of those because I got super busy. But if I didn't have Todoist, it's a very big chance that there would have been more than just one that I didn't complete.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't say that to stomp on Mike's accomplishment, because it's a great use of the app, and I think is what the feature set of Todoist is designed for. I just don't want people to get depressed if they're like, man, I only completed 300 tasks and I've been using it for 2 years. It's like, yeah. But Mike's busy. Mike's got a lot of stuff going on. And Mike has been smart because he, like me, has run into situations where you think you're going to remember a thing because you do it all the time. Life happens and you forget. You drop it. It's like, Remy's pitching a fucking fit. It's like, what the hell is his problem? Well, he ain't had no water in the whole
every day.
He had no water in the whole day. He's like, man, what the hell is my water, man? What are you doing?
Right. Don't forget that you need to buy me food too next week, Yeah.
But great accomplishment, man. Like I'm glad that this seems to have been, I think this is the first system that I think you've tried that you've stuck with consistently. I know you kind of fell off a little bit for a while.
So I did drop off the bandwagon for a little bit. I think as of the last recording, I had started to do it again. And now I can say I've consistently completed 4 tasks per day. So I use it on a regular basis for 46 days now. So it's kind kind of cool that you can track those little stats like that and realize, hey, I am doing almost as good as I did last time. The last streak that I had was 61 days. So almost there.
Yeah, it's nice to have the streaks, man. And Fantastical may make me revisit the whole idea of Todoist now, because that is an easier way to access it from the Mac. Definitely. iOS, it might be a little, I'll probably just stick to the app if I continue to use it. But on the Mac, definitely it solves the problem that I had, which is how do I get crap in here from on my computer?
Can you add tasks through Fantastical to Todoist? Do you know?
You can. Yeah. So we got Todoist integration, Google Tasks. They added Zoom integration. They added a couple of services that I don't know anything about. Notably not on the list, and I know why it's not on the list, but notably not on the list for a company that is so heavily entrenched in the Apple ecosystem is OmniFocus. But that is because Omni Group does not yet have a public API to connect to their service. So that is why they are not present. Back to Android, man. So I interrupted you on your year review of Android and what you like and what's making you happy.
And what's frustrating, we've got to go into that too. I will bring up the Gmail thing, which we'll talk about in a minute. But so for the most part, Android has done me well. Android 10 has worked out best. I granted only spent probably 3 or 4 days on Android 9, so I can't really speak to that because I jumped into the beta as soon as I got my device, or very shortly after it. I am pretty satisfied with the launcher for my launcher. I've been using that. I every once in a while we'll go back to the Pixel launcher, but what was it, last week, maybe the week before, I reset my phone to factory defaults because I was having this weird issue. Speaking of which, resetting the factory defaults solved my conference call issue. Not sure what was going on there, but for those who didn't hear, when I called a specific conference line, after anywhere between 30 to 39 minutes, it would just hang up, reset my phone, and then I'd go to the phone and look at the recent calls, and there was no recent call to that conference call. It's like it never happened, and I knew that it did because I was on the call. And so I reset to factory defaults, and ever since I reset to factory defaults, I've remembered that, TalkBack allows me to customize a lot of things. And when you don't keep those customizations, sometimes things are a little more sluggish. So an example of that is for a while, I would have a swipe right and up gesture, which I know some people are not too happy with the gesture-based navigation versus multi-touch input. Hopefully something will change in that in the foreseeable future. But I would swipe right and up, for example, to switch between my not granularity, but to switch between my selector options. And I didn't realize this until Namer on the Anted podcast was talking about it with us one day. You can go to TalkBack settings, go to gestures, and choose selector as one of the options. And then if you go into the selector, which is an option inside TalkBack settings, you can choose what you want there. So for example, I have speech rate and I have navigation and audio ducking are the 3 options that I have in there right now. And you can use the gesture right and up or whatever you set it to go between those settings, and you can make changes on the fly, which is pretty handy. It was a feature that I missed, most closely equivalent to the rotor, but not quite the same thing on iOS. So that when you don't have those little things set up, the other one that I had is I had a gesture that was scrub left, right. So you go left and then right real quick, and that starts reading from the next item on the page, which is kind of like a say all gesture as well. But now that I have those set back up, I'm able to quickly navigate through my phone. I use it every day at work for queuing people on the air, which is pretty makes me feel very confident, especially when Barry is introducing some of our listeners. He's like, yeah, and here's Michael. He's the one who makes me stay on task and keeps me abreast of what's going on in the rest of the world while I'm here in the studio. And so being able to accomplish that with my phone is definitely re-encouraging. Now, have I thought about wanting to switch back to iOS? Yeah, the thoughts crossed my mind a time or two, especially with like Fantastical and shortcuts are 2 things I kind of miss. But really, that's about all that I'm missing. Web browsing could be a lot better. It's got its. I don't know how to explain it, Damashe. Maybe you can. It's a little sluggish at times, dependent on the browser you're using. So I've been using Edge most of the time, and that's actually working fairly well. And then I read about another browser, which I don't remember the name of it, that I'm going to try out and see how that works. But for the most part, I'm pretty satisfied with Android after a year, and hopefully we'll be trying a new device in the near future.
I would say that web navigation is probably the most problematic area. And there are other areas that can be annoying. There are other little gotchas here and there. And it's just, there are some things that are different, like the gestures. The gestures don't bother me as much because Google had to do something. Like they had to come up with some solution. And we never know outside, looking in and like, well, why didn't they try to do the rotor gesture like Apple? Well, who knows what they have in their development pipeline and they want to use those gestures for that are just, there for everyone's use versus, Apple's approach. I think it's a different approach, but I think there's a lot more customization there as well. We're seeing Apple kind of get more into that. There's a lot more voiceover customization available now than there used to be. But when it comes to Android, I would say web navigation is probably the worst. Like it's the big thing that will make me be like, it's hard to make the switch for that reason because I spend so much time in Safari on iOS, a ridiculous amount of time in Safari on iOS, considering I have a nice Mac to go sit down at. But yeah, as Mike said, it can be sluggish at times. Sometimes it's extremely snappy. Sometimes it just seems like the page, your navigation just kind of bogs down and you freeze for a bit. And then it unfreezes and does a whole bunch of crazy stuff. Because in the meantime, while I was frozen, you were trying to do things. And it's like, oh, I swiped, I tried touching the screen, I did some things. And next thing you know, it's doing 17 things that it froze up and did. Now, to be fair about it, there are a lot of advantages to Android's position in the market outside of web browsing being an issue. I feel like Google has a more forward-thinking, more rapid implementation of some of the security features that are available to end users, whereas Apple seems to kind of be a little bit, I'm not going to say lackadaisical. It takes them longer to integrate said feature. So one example is I've been chatting with Mike off and on over the past month and a half about security keys and using security keys. Yubico is probably the most well-known company that makes USB security keys for you to plug into your computer, and they have versions that work with USB-C devices, period. They have a Lightning version out, and they also work with NFC. And there are other companies out there. I don't know about all of them. Like I said, Yubico is the brand that you hear and you think like, oh, it's a little security key token thingy, whatever. Google has had that built into their Pixels since, I want to say, the Pixel 2. I know for certain it's in the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 4.
Yep.
And they're using their version of what Apple calls a secure enclave on iOS and on T2 equipped Macs. Google calls it the Titan security key. They have had that feature built in at least since the Pixel 3, if not for earlier devices and all subsequent devices. So the Pixel AXL also has that capability. And what it does is allow you to use your device with your authentication method. So, I'd like the fingerprint, integration on the Pixel 3. I could go to a website on my Mac in Chrome, unfortunately. Again, that's where like Apple's kind of lagging behind the rest of the industry, and it's lagging behind Google specifically in this. Most of the security capabilities over Bluetooth with something like a phone on the Mac only are going to work for you in Chrome at the moment. If I go to Safari, I got to use an alternative method. So I think Google is leading in a lot of places where Apple is not caught up to them yet, just as, there are some areas where Apple has refined their approach and their methods, and Google is still kind of in flux.
One thing I do want to mention that I forgot to on the note of accessibility and Google and Apple on different pages. So Apple has a pass-through gesture. I forget what is the pass-through gesture, or do they?
One finger double tap and hold.
Okay, so Apple has the pass-through gesture of one finger double tap and hold. Thank you, Damashe. And it works, but one thing that I can do with Android, for example, and this may play into the reasoning behind why they don't have multi-touch gestures, is if I put two fingers on the top of my screen, I slide them down real quick, my notification screen opens. If I tap on the screen somewhere with two fingers on a button that TalkBack for some reason isn't activating when I double tap, it will activate that button. So your pass-through gesture is simply to use two fingers instead of one. which is it's got its pros and cons. It's something that I think is often forgotten about.
And it's a little different because Apple's gesture is dependent on you doing a double tap and hold to initiate that gesture. And then I'm going to say, comparing to Android, there's more limitations as to what you can do with that gesture with VoiceOver. So let's say you have a button that's not activating with a double tap with VoiceOver. Oftentimes a double tap and hold on that button will get it to activate for you.
Right.
But you can, but it's finicky. I've done it, but it's very finicky to to touch your status bar on iOS and then do a double tap and hold and try to swipe down and make the control notification center come down like that. That's not the best, experience, in my opinion. So it's just a different approach. It's different approaches, different optimizations, and different focuses. And the thing I want to say about Google is I feel like given where they were 10 years ago, since everybody's doing their, review of the past decade, Google has come a tremendous distance from where they were because they were not even on the same path of accessibility when it comes to Android that they're on today. Whereas Apple was on the same path that they're currently on. They've just continued to add capabilities, add features, and refine that functionality and expand it. Whereas Google, about 10 years ago was around when I think internally Google was starting to think, maybe we shouldn't have went this way. We need to rethink this whole eyes-free approach to Android that we've been tackling. So I think, from my experience, and consider that around 8 years ago, I was using a Android device full time. I think they've come a tremendous way, to be honest. And the web is difficult. To be fair about it, the web is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Apple, one of the biggest differences in Apple and other browser vendors, whether that be Google, Mozilla with Firefox, Brave, Vivaldi, all these other browsers that exist, Microsoft with Edge, is that Google pushes a lot of web stuff forward, but they also tend to stick to the standards, whereas Apple will start with the standard and then they'll tweak it just a little bit. They can't just take the out of the box standard and deploy it as is, which is what Google tends to do. If Google's using what is considered a web standard, we'll take RTC, for example, which is what we're actually using at the moment to talk to each other through the browser as WebRTC. This would not work in Safari simply because Apple has WebRTC, but it's a weird implementation. They've done some extra bits to it that don't make it compliant with all of the other software. What are we using?
Oh no,
SquadCast.
There you go.
They make things like I said, early on. I'm using Edge today because Mike finally convinced me to take a look at Edge. So I'm using Edge today, but I can use this in Edge. Mike's using it in Chrome. I can load it up in Firefox probably.
And I could open my Android phone right now and log into this, and it would prompt me. Yep, it would prompt me, do you want to allow this app access to this website access to your microphone? I'd tap yes, and all of a sudden I'm in the call using Android. Lower audio quality. Well, lower audio quality unless I got my adapter plugged in and this and that and this and that. But it's less restrictive, and that has negative side effects. Now, before we move on to something else, because I hope Damashe has something else for us to talk about, before we move on to something else, I do want to say neither of which platforms are perfect. I've heard some not so pleasant stories about iOS 13. So I'm not saying that Android's better than iOS, but if a blind individual was provided a Pixel device, or I've not used it, I've heard positive things, or a Samsung flagship device, I suspect that they would be I know that they would be able to navigate that phone. They'd be able to do everything they needed to and be successful in whatever endeavors they're going on with their mobile devices, because both platforms have access at this point in time. So hopefully nothing breaks in that, and things get better.
Oh man, I can tell you a lot of horror stories about iOS 13. Jesus. What I can do is predict the future. I can predict the future. WWDC 2020, iOS 14, iPad OS 14, Mac OS, whatever the hell it would be, 10.16. They're getting really ridiculous with that.
Wow.
watchOS, tvOS. I have a prediction. Stability. We're focusing on stability and bug fixes and optimizations. This is what they're going to say.
Isn't that what was 2018 though too? Like,
Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah.
It was
so maybe the
iOS
even number
12.
years are stability years. The odd number years are let's try new shit out.
Internally, they probably have a timeline for where they want to get to with certain cross-platform capabilities, and they're pushing really hard because for some reason they're behind somewhere, somehow. I think Intel may have something to do with that. I think them having to backtrack and actually make a Mac Pro versus letting the iMac Pro be their top-end computer has also affected that internal time clock, because I, like a lot of people, think that at some point Apple is going to, at least if nothing else, release ARM laptops built using their own custom chips. I don't think that the desktops are going to get them right away. Go ahead.
I heard a rumor yesterday. As you know, I am always listening to podcasts, Pocket Casts. Thank you very much. Anyways, I heard an episode on, I think it was DTNS, that was talking about there being a possible patent that Apple has filed, which we all know that patents can go one way or another, talking about folding devices, folding glass devices, which would play into that ARM laptop avenue. If you could have a foldable piece of glass that could turn into a laptop if necessary, then that could be a very interesting direction that Apple will go into.
Yeah, everybody seems to be on the folding thing. As we talked today, Samsung had an event yesterday where they released, they announced the Samsung
Flip.
S20.
Yeah, the Samsung S20 and the Flip.
Yeah, I found it interesting that they skipped a whole bunch of numbers to get to the S20.
Yeah,
like they would now, like the S9 or the S10 or something, but it's like, oh no, this is the S20.
Yeah, but now next year it'll be the Samsung 2021 or the Samsung 21, S21, something. You know, they can match it up with the years, hopefully.
Yeah, but I thought it was interesting that they chose to jump that far ahead. They could have just, kept on the same path that they were on.
Side note, anyway. Not really. You know, I'm kind of disappointed in tech. Well, let me rephrase that. I am disappointed in the amount of rumors that are available because it takes away the climax of tech events. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
Yeah. By the time the event comes around, everybody has leaked, has found out, and told the world in a way that is even hard to avoid hearing it, especially if you listen to podcasts about tech. So you kind of know what they're going to announce. I felt the same way at last year's iPhone event. It's like they didn't announce anything I didn't know about. Like there was nothing they announced. They went into more detail than had previously been available in some cases, but for the most part, the rumor sites had it correct. There were 3 phones that they announced: the iPhone 11 and the Pro, and even the stupid name. And I was like, they got to have that wrong. The Pro Max, and I was like, they're not going to call it that. They called it that. The camera configuration, all of that stuff was correct. And I'm like, I think the only thing that they announced last year that I think there had been rumors, but there have been rumors of it for a couple of years now with the Apple Watch, is this is going to be the year for the always on face.
Right.
I think that is probably the only thing that nobody actually nailed where they had actual, evidence that this was happening. So yes, it's a little disappointing when, it's like, why watch the event now? Like, find out whatever they're supposed to do and then listen to whoever talks about it, pontificates on it after the fact to see what additional details said. I already knew what they were going to create or launch or announce.
I get more excitement out of things that are not announced that people think they're gonna announce.
Yeah.
So, like the Tile, you've a competitor for Apple. I'm like, oh, they haven't announced that yet. Interesting. But when it does come, it'll be like, oh, it's finally here.
Oh, okay. They made that thing that they been to make forever. It's funny that Tile is actually taking them to court on something that they hadn't even announced, let alone released. It hadn't even been officially announced by anybody at Apple. Tile is going to court on an anti-competitive, antitrust situation. I'm like, man,
right.
If your business is going to be destroyed because Apple comes out with a thing that competes with your device, then you weren't in a very good position in the first place. Because number one, you can use Tile the company tiles stuff with all devices, whether it's an Android device or iOS device.
Right.
Even if you're still running around with a Windows Phone device that is still working, you can use tile with a bunch of different stuff. And there's a lot more interesting ways for you to expand that business so that even if Apple releases it, like, first off, the only people that are going to buy are people who are 100% in the Apple ecosystem. Secondly, nobody's going to not buy your stuff unless they're just not going to, like, I haven't bought a tile because I'm just not going to buy a tile. If Apple releases one, I'm not going to buy Apples either because I don't fucking want one.
So I don't really have anything else. This session has turned into an interesting mixture of technology conversations. Do you have any other topics you want to cover before we wrap it up?
Man, I'm bothered and I'm concerned about the rhetoric that is being pushed by the FBI and Attorney General William Barr. It's William Barr guy. Like, he's either he is like stupid like a fox or he's really stupid. I don't know what it is. But I'm concerned at the scare tactics that they're promoting about, encryption of your devices, encryption of messaging services, encryption of, basically, if stuff is encrypted in the government that has a way to get into it, we can't find child pornographers. We can't find terrorists. We can't find.
That's bullshit.
Yes, it's bullshit. I know it's bullshit. You know it's bullshit. But the average.
We've had encryption forever already.
My thing is what they're asking for, like what the government actually wants. Like, and I some people most people don't know me. I try to be objective, right? I try to at least look at somebody else's position. So before I say you're stupid as hell, I've at least taken into account what you were thinking about when you said a thing. As a law enforcement officer, as an intelligence officer, obviously, I would like to be able to peek into every fucking thing that's going on in the world when I want to be able to peek into it so I can find out what the hell is going on so I can stop people from getting killed. Obviously, that is a thing that makes sense from your perspective. But even if I were an intelligence officer or a law enforcement officer, I would also have to think about if I weaken encryption by forcing companies like Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, etc., on and on and on, your signals of the world, to put in back doors that would allow governments access, lawful access, so they say, but that all depends on your country's laws. But let's say the U.S. government, lawful access to me and Mike's signal conversations or the information that's stored on my iPhone. If I force them to put a backdoor in that is exposed, then it is highly likely, and I'm going to speak about this in specifically here just as a U.S. resident, as a person, if I was hypothetically working for the U.S. government. So nothing I say is really reflective of my necessarily opinions about other countries. Let's say I were an intelligence officer. I would have to weigh the balance of weakening encryption that exists to secure people's data on their devices, secure their backups. Shout out to Google too. They have full end-to-end encrypted, trust no one backups of your Android devices. Apple doesn't even have that in the cloud. So shout out to Google for doing it. Apple need to catch the hell up because it's getting annoying. Anyway, if I were an intelligence officer, like I said, obviously I would like to be able to see everything I want to see when I need to see it, so I can preventatively stop terrorist attacks, for example. But let's be honest. First of all, the terrorists are not stupid. They're not as stupid as people try to make them out to be, like, oh, they're just a bunch of dumbass people. If they was that fucking dumb, they'd have been caught a long time ago. All right. They would never get away with the stuff that they managed to pull. Secondly, if we start poking holes in encryption so they don't have a way to securely talk to each other across the internet, you know what they're going to do? They're just going to start putting people on airplanes and say, hey, you got a message. I'm only going to tell it to you. You're not even writing it down. I'm going to tell it to you. Get on a plane, fly over here, meet this guy, make sure it's the guy that you're supposed to be meeting, and tell him the thing that I just said to you. Wait for his answer, get your ass back on the plane, come back over here, drive back out to the middle of the fucking desert, tell me what the fuck he said. All right? This is how we're going to do this. How you going to stop that? But what you have done in the meantime by weakening the encryption, forcing back doors to be put into encryption because there's no mathematical way to make it work otherwise, is you have now made my device as a United States citizen less secure. So it means if the Chinese government, nothing against people in China, I love Chinese people in general. Your government's kind of fucked up. So is ours at the moment. Shout out Donald Trump. The Iranian government, the Russians, whoever manages to discover this back door into, let's say, iPhones or Android phones or the encryption of signal messages, like you've just given them tremendous power. And me as a user, I am powerless. Yet the people who are committing crimes in the world, the people who are really seriously committing crimes at a huge, massive scale. I'm not talking about your dumbass guys who go to knock over a fucking liquor store and get caught 2 days later. I'm talking about your people who are doing crimes at a massive scale. They are going to continue to use encryption if they need to use encryption because the technology is out there. You cannot take away the understanding of math. All you can do is force a company like Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, whoever, to put a hole into their security, which makes it automatically less secure. Now, let's get into the other problem. As an intelligence officer for the United States of America, you have now weakened the technology that we use to secure our data as a fucking country.
If I was a criminal mastermind, which those who know me know I'm not, I have to use Todoist to keep myself on task, and I don't think that's encrypted. I would just go build a app that had encryption. Like it's that simple. So why take the risk of all Americans who use a device on a regular basis and say, yeah, let's have a backdoor. No one else is going to use it. And then you got companies like Clearview. You've heard about Clearview, right?
Oh, geez, man. Google, you know you're doing something wrong, man. When Facebook, Google, and Twitter all come together to put a stop to what you're doing. You know you're doing some wrong shit, man. You're doing something
and that's with no backdoors, no well-known backdoors in any sort of encryption. If a company like Clearview can pull off the shit they've pulled off, what would happen if there's just use this special little program and it'll get you into the encryption of any device that you want to get into? What type of data is going to be gathered there? So on that note, I think we can wrap it up now.
I should probably explain to people what Clearview is very quickly for those who don't know. We'll drop a link in the show notes into some more articles, but basically Clearview is a company that, using the publicly available APIs, although they did violate terms of service of said companies, they have scraped Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, other social media networks to pull all of the images that people have, at least profile pictures, at least. I'm not going to say all of your images, but profile pictures, which are usually publicly available to everybody. And they have compiled this massive database where you can dump an image into their database and say, who's this guy? And they'll be like, hey, that's Damashe Thomas. We got his, information right here off of Facebook. Clearly a violation of Facebook's, Twitter's, etc.'s terms of service, first of all. Secondly, that shit is scary as hell, dude. Because the potential for a identification or a wrongful identification of somebody by AI is terrible to even consider. Like, I could end up getting locked up just because somebody looks close enough to me that the computer says, oh yeah, that's Damashe. It's like, nah, man, that wasn't me. How the fuck did I even get to Louisiana, bro? I was over here babysitting. What you doing? It's like, nah, man, you going to jail. While we're talking about law enforcement access to data that nobody else is supposed to have access to, etc., I must follow up on a discussion we had. I think it was DM42. It might have been DM41 about Amazon's company Ring using their cameras to pass information to law enforcement, basically using the doorbell cameras to pass information to law enforcement, having a web port and all that. Amazon has, or Ring, I guess I should say, has put more control in the hands of the customer so that they can say, I don't want my data to be used by law enforcement, or only ask me on a case-by-case basis, can law enforcement use my video? So they have attempted to clean it up somewhat. I think I would be remiss, since I went on such a rant last time about the bullshit they was doing, not to at least point that out. I'll drop a link in the show notes to the actual article that explains it. I personally still am not buying a Ring doorbell. Man, yeah, that's all the Christian thing. Russia, man. So I got a question for you. Google did this in China, right? Where China started to impose rules on Google. Google didn't like it. So Google left the whole entire country of China. Like, they just pulled out with Google search and all that. They're gone. This happened several years ago. Russia has passed a law that says all cell phone makers must preload Russian approved apps on their devices before they're in the hands of end users. And the big debate outside, and probably inside of Apple too, is what the hell are they going to do? Are they going to just pull out of Russia? Are they going to capitulate to Russia?
Right.
Now, I'm not a Russian citizen, but as a Russian citizen, I might have the perspective that, it's kind of unfair that this United States company can put all their crap on the phone and I don't have anything representing me. I can see that point of view. But again, Apple's not a Russian company. They're a United States company. I think the same things apply. Like, I would not like for the U.S. government to say, oh, Apple, you got to give us access to your stuff and keep that shit secret so that we can spy on the Russians, right? Same way I don't like what Russia's trying to do with their shit. I don't know what Apple's going to do. Personally, one option open to them is to preload the apps on just because in the EU, is it the EU? No, not the EU. The UAE, the Middle East, FaceTime is not allowed in some countries. So your iPhone that you buy over there, not over here, you got to be over there in one of their Apple stores, maybe Dubai, could be an example. You buy an iPhone, you turn it on, you set it up, you don't have FaceTime on your device.
Interesting. I did not know that.
So they could do what Russia wants them to do, which is put these preloaded apps on the device.
Right.
Problem with that is, what do you do in the United States? Because here's the thing, like, they're using some of those apps, at least, are going to allow the Russian government, the Russian intelligence service to peek into people's usage and what they're doing, etc., track them and all of that. So if they capitulate, then, who's going to be in line next? Oh, Mr. Trump. Hey, we want you to put this app on every iPhone you sell in the U.S. And first of all, things going to happen is I'm going to run Android. Like, man, fuck this. I'm out. Peace.
Mm-hmm.
But you open the door. Like, once you start to interfere with things of that nature, you capitulate as a company. Like, you only open yourself up to more countries saying, hey, you got to comply with the laws inside of our country too. I don't know if Apple can afford to pull out of Russia. My bigger concern is, what if China tries to do that to them?
Right.
A lot of their manufacturing is dependent on China. I don't know, man. It's interesting. Strange debate. Yeah. Strange. It's a strange time that we live in.
It is. And to think 12 years ago, we didn't really have to worry about this that much because smartphones weren't
was getting all the fucking data that they wanted, and nobody was saying anything about anything. It's only when we as people started getting the ability to encrypt our devices and keep stuff out of the eyeballs of the federal government that, we started having problems. And it's like, well, at any rate, my final point is, do your own research. Don't let the hyperbole being thrown around, because here's the thing. Think about it. 20 years ago, you didn't have access to any of the data. You couldn't track people the way that you can track them today with a cell phone. And people still got arrested. People still went to jail. People still had to pay for their crimes. So I call bullshit. On the we can't arrest people. We can't stop child pornography. Encryption continues to live. Secondly, man, there's commercially available software to encrypt shit. I mean, hell, PGP, like, they can't stop you from going to download PGP. Like, they can't stop you from doing that. They can't stop you from downloading VeriCrypt. They can maybe force Facebook to put some backdoors into Messenger, but they cannot force you, the individual, to not use software. And like I said, like Mike said, if we were criminal masterminds, if we really were trying to do some devious shit, we're not going to use an iMessage or Facebook Messenger to do it on in the first place.
Write our own.
That would be retarded. I'm going to use some open source where the code has been vetted and I know for a fact that this shit is secure before I decide, we're going to plan our strategy to take over the world in iMessage and Todoist. Like, that makes a lot of sense.
On that scary note, you can find me on Twitter at Payown, P-A-Y-O-W-N, when I'm there. And he is...
at Damashe, D-A-M-A-S-H-E.
You've been listening to Your Own Pay Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, visit yourownpay.com/cast for exclusive content and to contact us today. We're eager to hear your thoughts and about how you're making this podcast your own. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon. The Your Own Pay Podcast, yourownpay.com.